This is Rick speaking. Hello and welcome to Champion Individual Rights, where I always focus on the importance of digesting reality in a moral context. Today, we live in a world where U.S. politicians and political leaders around the world are behaving as if individual rights do not even exist. What can we do to turn this situation around? We have to begin by digesting reality in a moral context. In making my points today, I want to start off with Immanuel Kant's perceptions on how we think, how we comprehend, and bring reality, digest the reality of the situations happening around us. Kant explains that synthesis is the forming process of understanding used in order to gain real experience. Within synthesis, human comprehension has two primary facilities, the sensibility and the understanding. Under the sensibility, Kant explains that there are space and time, intuitions, and analytic judgments. And under the understanding, concepts and synthetic judgments. Kant explains in his work that thinking is uniting representations. Now, there are two very important rules of understanding that we have to use in our thought process that should be used in helping us make accurate determinations. One of them is never claim certainty to that which is hypothetical. When you know something, you can prove its possibility. But when you think something, as opposed to knowing it, you can think what you please, providing it's a possible thought and there are no contradictions. It still will leave open the possibility that this particular appearance in your mind is not accurate, an appearance being an idea derived from a perception or a combination of perceptions. Another very important rule of understanding that we have to use is to always look for contradictions to your perceptions. Why? Because thinking is uniting representations. There can't be any contradictions. A contradiction can only exist in an imaginary world, not the real one. If you're not looking for contradictions to your perceptions, it's a clear indication that you are in a state of concept manipulation. Also, if you're not looking for contradictions to your arguments, and almost certainly your ill-conceived perceptions are going unchecked. This will leave you in an imaginary world filled with contradictions, an illusionary world where reality is often scoffed at. Now, in digesting reality in a moral context, it's important to understand all morality stems from the recognition of individual rights. If you don't have a right to your life, somebody could run over you on the sidewalk in a car and there wouldn't be anything wrong with it. Or someone could come up to you with a gun, stick it to your head, and pull the trigger, and there wouldn't be anything wrong with it. Now, thinking is uniting representations with well-defined moral values, which enables us to gain real experience, enabling us to decipher reality in a moral context. It's important to note, it's the moral law that distinguishes human beings from the beast. A beast cannot comprehend the moral law. Hence, to a beast, life is but a brute fact. When man separates himself from the moral law, he will then become as the beast, and it is brutality that will follow. And that explains all the suffering going on around the world today in wars. Now, within our base perceptions, we have to have well-defined moral values within them, which should be used in helping to make accurate determinations in regards to making morally sound judgments. When you go to government school, they don't teach you anything about individual rights because they do not want you to have the ability to decipher reality in a moral context. Now, within my base perceptions, I have four main base perceptions that I use to help me in making accurate determinations. The most important one, of course, is the recognition of individual rights, of which all morality stems from. The most basic right being that of the individual to their own life, and it has to follow to the product of their own endeavors. So the recognition of individual rights with the understanding that every individual should have a right to their own life, privacy, and possessions, regardless of their ethnicity or the geography upon which they preside. Now, my other three moral values are consistent with the recognition of individual rights. And there's other ones also that you might acquire to yours, but they have to be consistent with the recognition of individual rights. The second one being the recognition of the two common laws that are said to be derived from all of the world's religions. Quote, do all you have agreed to do, and do not encroach on other persons or their property, unquote, I'd like to add to that, without their consent. And that's from Richard Mayberry at richardmayberry.com. Number three, the recognition that the politicians should be bound to the same laws of the conscience that the average individual is bound to. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the moral law applies to all rational creatures necessarily, to all of the human race, and that would just happen to include the political leaders of the world. And number four, the recognition that, quote, if the goal be good, the means of obtaining the goal must be good, else the goal becomes corrupted, unquote. Mahatma Gandhi. Now, when you are at a young, vulnerable age, the force of government, and this is before you have developed the mature ability to distinguish that which is true from that which is false, the force of government moves in and begins programming you as to how you are to think about things, contaminating you with a thought process that is defective. Because they want to be able to control you. They want to be able to manipulate the way you think about things. Now, I've given this young, vulnerable period of time a name because I don't think anybody else ever has, and it occurs somewhere between soon after you were born through your early childhood. The name I have given it is the cerebral vulnerable period. I named it in Latin, the cerebrae vulnerabilis tempus. Interestingly, the Latin translation of government is mind control. So there's a contamination that takes place. They want to contaminate you with this defective thought process. Within this defective thought process, individual rights are not even recognized. Perceptions are filled with contradictions. Words have no intrinsic meaning, and there are no well-defined moral values. Hence, reality is not deciphered in a moral context, and there's an illusion that is created, which is propped up through the good goal fallacy. Governments always tell you that whatever they do, it's for some good goal. Now, important to point out, it's only an illusion. Politicians operate under the fallacy that their goals are so high, that they are so lofty, that they can do anything they want in order to achieve their goals. In reality, and we all know this as an individual, the higher your goals are and the more people that they affect, all the more important that the means of affecting your goals, of achieving your goals, be good. Now, in the war against Iraq illusion, I think it's important to know because it set a precedence. It set a precedence because the politicians lied about why they invaded and killed all those people, but it was accepted anyways. Now, U.S. politicians claimed they invaded Iraq in the name of fighting a war against terror, and that they had proof that Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to bin Laden and 911. They also claimed that they have, and continue to claim, that they have liberated Iraq. Let's analyze this. They had proof that Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to bin Laden and 911. These were lies, and lies are contradictions to the facts of reality. They invaded Iraq over what amounted to be imaginary perceptions. Once again, perceptions are filled with contradictions. And once again, there was no noticeable moral outrage from the American people when it announced that there were no weapons of mass destruction or ties to bin Laden and 911. That's scary. Now, they also claimed that they have liberated Iraq. 1.4 million Iraqis are dead over a hoax, and millions more have suffered. If words are to have intrinsic meaning, Iraq has been devastated, not liberated. So words have no intrinsic meaning. Also, quote, the deliberate killing of a large group of people of a different ethnicity or of a particular nation, unquote, is a definition of genocide, not liberation. Going on, U.S. politicians claimed that they invaded Iraq in the name of fighting a war against terror. Can anyone deny that whenever you rape someone that you were not terrorizing them? And the rape in Iraq was widespread. It always has been this way in war, even though in recent history they claim that rape has been it's illegal. It's just a bunch of nonsense because they keep right on doing it. It states on Wikipedia that in war, rape is used as a form of psychological warfare to humiliate and intimidate the enemy. They burnt their cities down. Do you think that if somebody invaded America and burnt our cities down, that that would not be a form of terror? They tortured them and over what amounted to be a pack of outright lies. They terrorized them when they tortured them, and they killed an estimated 1.4 million people, terrorizing them. Many Iraqis, hundreds of thousands, are left without arms and legs, and even worse. And while they terrorized the Iraqi people, they claimed that they were fighting a war against terrorism. Absolutely absurd. Now, I want to point out, and this is very important, it has to be recognized that the politicians should be bound to the same laws of the conscience that the average individual is bound to. If I lied about why I killed 5 people and made the claim that I had liberated them, I would be considered a dangerous, lying, mass murdering psychopath, and I would wind up incarcerated. It's time to start fighting and promoting for the rights of the people of the world. There is no reason to continue following in the errant footsteps of our forefathers. It is only through our moral cognition and our ability to digest reality in a moral context that mankind can achieve its ultimatum, world peace, through the recognition of individual rights on a global basis, with the understanding that every individual, that's every man, woman, and child, should have a right to their own life, privacy, and possessions, regardless of their ethnicity or the geography upon which they preside. This is the exact opposite position of the morally bankrupt, deep state, New World Order nonsense that is transpiring today around the world, causing massive suffering, death, and destruction. With the threat of nuclear war in the air, now is the time for a peaceful revolution of thought. Thank you for considering my words.